Right, I think I might be live. Let's try and do this the old-fashioned way. And we're live. That's about as good as it gets, I'm afraid. Good evening, everyone, if I'm in fact on the correct channel. Yeah. PMQs was fun. I mean, cancer is fun. And it's not, for the most part, about Brexit. I'm sure there are things we could talk about with regards to Brexit. But I'm going to save it for the paper fiddler, who makes a bit of a gaffe in one of his little virtuous comments. And it is amusing, to say the least. I think with them not focusing as much on Brexit is a good thing, though. It means we can go back to doing what we used to do on this channel when it came to... There was an MP that did in fact say that, you're quite right. And if I had the timestamp for it, James, I would in fact pull it up. Before we start, of course, hello, obviously, Jude James, Scott Carr, Serene, Haley, Kitten, Quilled, hello, Karma, Pink Hello, Deb, Deb, let's go with Deb, Deb's red, yes, Prospero, Catkin, hope you're, I'm Peter Edwards, hello. It's nice to be able to go back to what we used to do when there were plenty of sources to go through legislation. And yes, I do look fabulous. I had asked somebody to put me in my regular clothing, but that's on the back burner for now, so you're going to have to put up with this. For the sake of continuity when I stream with Trups, it's right that we use the same person who does the same artwork. Hello, Maltloaf. Deb's red. Yeah, thank you. But yes, we get to at least address certain comments made about the NHS on this stream, which is nice. Because then we're not being put in a position of constantly repeating the same Brexit arguments until the SNP stand up. I do thank you, Catkin. I really appreciate it. Excuse me. Pink Carlo. I like it. Yeah, so let's dive into it. Oh, I mean, actually switch sources. There we go. As is tradition, there is... Oh yes, I wish it was WTO. There is a considerable amount of virtue, not least because of the royal birth, which is of course a huge thing. I believe the kid is called Archie. Congratulations to you both. Well, I believe the full name is Archibald. Right. That kid's gonna get bullied. Just gonna say now. Although, kid could be even more bullied if the kid is mixed race and ginger. That would be even more. Yeah. Only because you're a rare breed. There was something else. Oh yeah, also because of, hello Dr. Cap. I started early because I was bored. And also I want to record tomorrow's video after I do this, before I have to do overtime on my day off tomorrow. Because that's how it works. Oh yeah, the other virtue include, I think, Ramadan. And of course that's a huge opportunity to stand virtuous. I actually wondered if perhaps we got to the point... Hello, Takeout Joe. I'm wondering if we'll ever get to the point where on all religious holidays, MPs, I mean all of them, hello W.R. Corsten, I'm wondering if we'll get to the point where all MPs will observe and partake in all religious festivals. And I'm wondering if they will eventually get to the stage where MPs in Parliament all observe and partake in Ramadan, which I think is, like, I think probably the most virtuous thing you could do. Like, you kind of, oh, VE Day, nice. See, that's more important to me, VE Day. I remember being 10, going on one of the only holidays I've ever been on. I actually went to I think it was in Exeter, where one of the battleships was on VE Day, and it was amazing. They had a crap gift shop, though. Sorry for dawdling for the last 5 minutes there like that, but, well, I had to fill the time somehow, and I'm trying to, get more comfortable speaking again, properly, on a stream where I don't sound then like I'm cutting myself, do I? Although I never was to begin with, to be clear, you know what I mean. I have top chat, not live. If I missed anyone, my apologies if I have. Oh, is this the... Lol, that is not what I wanted, and because of that, I love that James gave me a link just now, but when he did, YouTube doesn't open it in a window, it opens it in the chat box itself, meaning I just lost my chat, so I can't see you guys for a second. I'm now having to go back to the stream to pop out another chat. Thank you, James. Hello, Stargazer, and I do apologise for this delay now, because that was unfortunate. Apparently an update in YouTube, it doesn't open it in a separate window, so I'm not going to open that again. I do apologise, but I'm not doing that. There's a leaflet being released by the PM, I think, try and drum up support for Maze Deal and mention leaving somewhere. Yes, because, hello Swan, because it is a temporary solution to remain in those very things. Which means we're not leaving. Anyway. Oh, hang on, this is muted. That's me, that's why. Let's go here.
Order. Questions to the Prime Minister.
Oh, crap.
Janet Davey.
Sorry about that.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
The Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure that the whole House will wish to join me in offering our heartfelt condolences to the family and friends of Guardsman Matthew Talbot of the 1st Battalion Coldstream Guards, who has sadly died during anti-poaching operations in Malawi. Mr. Speaker, members across the House, I'm sure, will also want to join me in sending my very best wishes to their Royal Highnesses, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, on the birth of their son. Monday marked the beginning of Ramadan, a time of peace, devotion and charity, and I know that members from across the House will want to join me in saying to Muslims in the UK and across the world, Ramadan Kareem. And later today I will be hosting a reception to celebrate Fasaki and to celebrate the immense contribution that the Sikh community makes to this country. And Mr. Speaker, this week marks 20 years since the 1999 Scottish Parliament and National Assembly for Wales elections. 2 decades on, we remain committed to strengthening devolution within the United Kingdom. And as we leave the European Union, we will bring new powers and responsibilities to Holyrood and Cardiff Bay. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Janet.
I'm not going to let her ask a question just yet. Hello, Jacob. So, the man who was killed, the military man, killed on doing his anti-poaching work, rather ironically, I guess, was killed by an elephant, which is, of course, tragic, but at the same time there's an air of humour to it. And hello, Davey. There'll be more virtue, I promise you. I often find it fascinating just how far politicians will go, because there's a lot of it, and there was a lot then. Personally, I'd be happy for VE Day and the Sikhs. They do contribute considerably to this country. And, well, they're not known for being leeches. Anyway.
Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I agree with all the tributes made by the Prime Minister. Data from the TUC suggests that 780,000 people are on zero-hour contracts, with 2/3 of those preferring guaranteed hours. A constituent of mine lives in a privately rented accommodation and works 2 jobs on zero-hour contracts. After getting his 3rd job on a zero-hour contract, his rent went up. He and his family survive, but only with the use of a local food bank. Will the Prime Minister end these burning injustices and ban zero-hour contracts?
A few things from this. Burning injustices, cringe. You mentioned quite a large number of people on 0-hour contracts, with the majority wanting guaranteed work. Isn't that generally what people want to begin with, regardless of where they work? I used to be on a 0-hour contract and I wanted a full-time contract. It's kind of a given, really. We take a 0-hour contract because it is at least a chance for us to put our foot in the door. I don't agree with 0-hour contracts, by the way. I really don't. I do want to clear up a few mistakes, though, because I actually bothered to pull up the facts. So, oh, excuse me. That was irritating. There is an estimated 905,000 people on 0-hour contracts. 2.8% of the UK's full employment market, which is 1 in 35. 1.7 million contracts didn't guarantee hours in 2016, which is 6% of all contracts. 32% of people on 0-hour contracts want more hours, but the remainder did not want more hours. So it's not a case of getting rid of 0-hour contracts at all. It's those people that want proper work, needing opportunity to have a proper job. I think it's important to point this out because it's not simply a case, yes, they're not very good. I'll agree. There are employment rules that exist. Hello, memes of destruction. Hope you're well. There are rules that exist. Guaranteeing minimum wage. Guaranteeing leave holiday. Contracts do not work at all. Yet we just call that job seekers allowance. It is a case that it's one of those weird little not guaranteed jobs, like Sports Direct. They're renowned for 0-hour contracts. And as a consequence of that, and I just realised my chat says top chat again. I should just... don't know why that exists. But yes, 0-hour contracts. It's a way of the employer negating having to hire full-time staff to keep their costs down, of course. I don't agree with that. I think they should keep a set number of staff, but that's how they run their business because the law allows them to. 0-hour contracts have existed for a very long time. In fact, I couldn't find out, well, with the limited time I had today, could not find out who created them in the UK, because they went back quite far, because let's face it, job security hasn't existed for a very long time at all. Needless to say, they still exist, and it's always worth pointing out when you want to argue from the position of, hello Vanilla Bear, if you want to get rid of something like 0-hour contracts, okay, why when you guys were in government did you allow them to exist and get to the highest point they've actually had as far as people being employed under them? It's like you have no leg to stand on at that point. Anyway, let's hear the Prime Minister's response.
Guys, can I say to the Honourable Lady, the party that recognised an issue about 0 hours contracts was the Conservative Party in government. The Labour Party did nothing about 0 hours contracts. It was the Conservatives that banned exclusive 0 hours contracts.
Hello, Irate Bear. Hope you're well. Oh, hang on. There was something she said that I wanted to pick up on.
Contracts was the Conservative Party in government. The Labour Party did nothing about 0 hours contracts. It was the Conservatives that banned exclusive 0 hours contracts.
It's important to point out exclusive 0-hour contracts are not all 0-hour contracts. There is a distinction. That word exclusive is quite important.
Ricklefield!
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. School funding on the doorsteps in Lewis is a huge issue, and that's because historically schools in Lewis have had significantly less funding for decades compared to neighbouring authorities like Brighton and Hove. Last year, schools in Sussex got a 6% increase in funding, and this year, schools like Lewis Priory should be getting a 7.6% increase in their per-pupil funding, but £64,000 of that is being kept behind by the council. Will the Prime Minister do all she can to ensure the schools get the funding that they've been awarded?
Hello, so psyched. So, exclusive 0-hour contracts is a particular type of 0-hour contract for a certain field. It's not relevant to, for example, let's say, retail. Oh, and school funding. This is going to be a really irritating myth. It keeps cropping up, so I'm going to debunk it now. Theresa May will keep saying that more schools are getting more money. You're right. However, relative and absolute increase and all that, this does not take into account inflation and student increase, as in numbers. Therefore, the additional money you're putting in does not account for population growth, which is quite important. Hello, Duck Dog.
Well, I think my honourable friend has raised a very important point, because we have recognised that we've been asking schools to do more. We've responded to that with the highest level of school funding on record. We've introduced the new national funding formula to make the distribution fairer. But of course it is still the case that the local authorities are responsible for determining individual schools' budgets from the overall sum that they have received. And they...
Oh, fuck it. I would point out, with the thing she just said, that school, what was it? It was the council setting the funds. They themselves have had to cut the costs. Also, to address Ira Bear's back chair issue, bad back and all that, I can absolutely relate, because I gave my desk chair to my sister, and she gave me this brand new one because she couldn't sit in it. But it has the back piece for it is a lounger one. It sort of leans right back. I'm a sit-up straight kind of person, so I'm stuck with this chair until I can buy a new one. I may have to, after I've got the soundproofing, make that my next Streamlabs goal, along with, I don't know, go on holiday.
overall sum that they have received, and they have a responsibility, and honourable members, I'm sure, will look to their local authorities to make sure that where schools should be receiving extra money, the local authorities are passing it on. But I will also ask the Department of Education, who will have heard the honourable lady's question, to write to her in more detail about it.
Jeremy
Bear, link me the chair you're getting, by the way. Just DM it to me, because I'd really appreciate it. Seriously. I don't have any... Unfortunately, this... and Davey, I will address this as well. The chair I'm sitting on, the gap between my lumbar and my shoulders is too great for the cushions. And I'm not making an excuse. It is genuinely that vast that I don't have enough cushions, because I hate cushions, so I don't have any. I'm in an empty house. It's just me. And so I guess I've been backed up into an unfortunate position.
Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I join the
Prepare for virtue.
Prime Minister in sending condolences to the family and friends of Guardsman Matthew Talbot, who died whilst on anti-poaching activities. It is a reminder of the diverse work that the armed forces do, and I think we thank them for it and the help they're giving to the people of Malawi. I join her also in welcoming the birth of the baby to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and that she, along with all of us, are recognising and enjoying Ramadan and Vaisakhi at this time. It's important to show the diversity of this country and celebrate all religious festivals. Mr. Speaker, I hope the whole House will also join me in congratulating a great football team. Manchester City on winning the Women's FA Cup. And in view of the amazing performance of Liverpool last night, perhaps the Prime Minister could take some tips from Jurgen Klopp on how to get a good result in Europe.
Cringe.
Mr. Speaker, our National Health Service is our country's greatest social achievement. Its staff show amazing dedication. But this...
Really? The greatest social achievement in the United Kingdom is the NHS? That's debatable. Huh. I thought perhaps Quick Save might be it. Thank you, Bear. Maybe, how about the Co-op? How about the greatest achievement in this country, a social achievement, would be, I don't know, the Beatles? How about flight? Electricity? No? Wasn't really a community thing, but you know what I mean. Common law. Yes, you're quite right. That's actually a fantastic Answer, Prospero. How about our greatest social achievement was, I don't know, winning 2 world wars? I don't know. Porn license. Fucking hell.
Government's failures are taking their toll. An NHS staff survey found that 40% of staff have reported suffering work-related stress in the last year alone.
I would point out with this comment, while true, it is true, I have the source for it. I haven't linked it though, I put it in the chat. I'll do it. I'll go and get it. While it is true, it is worth pointing out, where is it? Here it is. That these sources only derive information from the recent years, because we don't have records that go far back enough to confirm how people felt in the past, in the sense that we didn't have the same system in place to inquire as to the levels of stress employees experienced. Changing in the times, of course, is important, and I'm not denigrating what these facts say. They are true. But I really think I don't know, maybe it felt important to raise that it's inaccurate to just say it's the worst it's ever been or anything like that. Anyway, let's go back to it. Ah, there it is.
Mr. Speaker, can the government explain why they're being so severely let down by this government?
That is a very... Oh, hang on. I should address something. I forgot. How come Irate Bear isn't a mod? You're right, he should be a mod. I do apologise. There you go, Bear, you're a mod. There you go, babe. It is important to address something else I forgot to. The girl who asked the question, the first one, lady, sorry, she mentioned food banks. Again, with circumstances, I don't think it's inherently wrong that someone use a food bank in preparation of getting their first pay. In fact, if anything, this stops them going down the path of taking out a short-term loan. It's an unfortunate circumstance, but I'm glad it exists, because they didn't always exist. Just saying. And the question he's asked feels loaded, and it's entirely subjective. Yes, people are experiencing more work-related stress. I would point out, not inherently a bad thing, keeping people on their toes. It's also worth pointing out things like staff health. It was 39.8% feeling unwell as a result of work-related stress. But it's been noticed, all but 2018, that the results have been declining for ages. It had been going down. Hello, Devonor. I think it's tricky, because I don't want to denigrate what they do, because I know they're put under tremendous stress, and they are in a very stressy environment. I accept that, but they're in one of the most important environments, so the stress is always going to be there regardless. And as things get more complicated, procedures get more complex, it's always going to be a case that the stress is always going to exist. How one handles the stress, I think, is what we need to focus on. Perhaps that could be something worth investing in finding ways of helping employees either cope with the stress, manage the stress, or do better under the stress than they would if they weren't... Oh crap, I skipped tabs. If they were just left on their own. Having a support network is quite important after all. Labour's obsessed with food banks. Honestly, I'm surprised Corbyn doesn't give up his jam and chutneys to food banks, if he doesn't already.
Can I first of all say to the right honourable gentleman, I actually think that when we look at the Liverpool win over Barcelona last night, what it shows is...
Prepare for incoming cringe. In fact, I might put it in the chat just so you know.
That when everyone says it's all over, that your European opposition have got you beat... The clock's ticking down. It's time to concede defeat.
Fuck's sake.
Actually, we can still secure success if everyone comes together.
So cringy.
We ask. The right honourable gentleman asks about staffing in the NHS. What we see in relation to the NHS workforce is that for too long, governments have failed to produce the proper workforce planning to give our staff in the NHS the care that they deserve. It is this government, with its long-term plan, that is ensuring that we are giving that care to staff. The NHS staff work hard caring for patients. This government will care for NHS staff. It's only because we're able to give the NHS its biggest cash boost in its history, only able to give it that long-term plan, that we will deliver for NHS staff.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Before he speaks, okay, so I do agree with the sentiment that Theresa May says, in the sense of one must know what they're investing in. For a long time, and this guy can't deny it, even though he disagreed with Labour then on everything, he cannot deny Labour just threw money at something. And as far as I'm concerned, I would much rather, I'd prefer if politicians invested knowing what the money was going towards. Built up systems, built up services, instead of throwing money at it and saying, you do it. Because that's what happened. It happened for 13 years, and we can talk about how much Labour invested if you want. They did invest a lot. But what they call invest, I call throwing at a sticky wall. Because that's all it was. Whatever money stuck to it was the correct amount. Thank you for linking me another chair. I noticed Liverpool did win without Mohamed Salah. Yes, that was impressive. What was the chat? Oh, you want to hear something about the EU president stuff, Davey? You wait till tomorrow's political recap. I've got a video of Michel Barnier calling May quite a few nasty names. It's quite good. I do like the NHS, by the way, just to be clear. I do rail on it. I do value it. I mean, I think my prescriptions would be a considerable amount more expensive. I say prescriptions, plural, singular. I think it'd be a lot more expensive if it were not for the NHS. Okay. No, I haven't got one at Junker. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'll find something. I'm sure services would suffer if the NHS didn't exist. But this idea of what she's doing is a bad thing, although there were cuts, I remember them. But he's also ignoring the fact, or he's going to make a very rather interesting comparison. His comparison is going to be the amount Labour invested compared to what the Tories are currently investing. And I don't think that's a fair connection because of what Labour did with the money, or the NHS under Labour did with the money, compared to what the NHS is doing now with the Tories. Yes, they'll have pros and cons, but the cons are quite vast under Labour. Tories have their own problems, but it's not good for any of them. And yes, I noticed Theresa May is not wearing her typical anal beads. She's wearing her anal slavery band.
Speaker, under the last Labour government, NHS investment rose by 6% a year. Under this government, it's barely reached 1.5%.
You don't suppose that 6% was, let's see, unsustainable? Because it certainly feels like it was. I do recall a certain economic, whichever you want, crash. Today marks 20 years to the day that Gordon Brown decided in his infinite wisdom, while bullion was at its lowest possible value, to start selling off our gold reserves. Gold worth about 10 billion, he sold for 3.5. Are you out of your fucking mind? we sold off one of the things we kind of stole from everyone else, but valued regardless, for so little, because you were so desperate for cash. This is the kind of money, like, responsibility we came to expect from a government that had no idea how to spend money. And this twerp is no different. Duck Dog being a rebel.
And 5,000 nurses and midwives
Hello,
from
Jonas.
European Union countries have left the NHS in the past 2 years. And there are 100,000 staff vacancies across the NHS in England alone.
The nurse thing is a bit of a false... It's a bit of a... clever playing off on the fact. Yes, those EU workers for the NHS did leave. But they were in fact replaced.
The Royal College of Radiologists recently said that the shortage of cancer doctors puts care at risk. What is the Prime Minister doing to remedy this dangerous situation?
To the right honourable gentleman, what have we seen this year? What we have seen this year is... What we've seen this year is the numbers of doctors and nurses in the NHS at their highest level in its 70-year history. As I say, our NHS staff work hard 24/7, and their dedication is second to none. I'm proud of our NHS. He talks down our NHS. Let's just remember this. At the last general election, the Labour Party promised to give the NHS less money than the Conservative government is giving them. The Labour Party in government would crash the economy, which would mean less money available for the NHS. And who are the only party in government that has cut funding to the NHS? The Labour Party.
I need to quickly check something, because I wanted to make sure his question was what I thought it was.
5,000 nurses and midwives from European shortage of cancer doctors puts care at risk.
Right, sorry, ignore that.
And the principal ever taught.
Right, there was a reason I had to make sure it was the cancer thing, not infanticide, because there is something for that later. Have we left yet? You owe no apology. And hello, Jonas. And Hitler's second coming.
Labour Party.
Mr. Speaker, nobody on this side of the House ever talks down the NHS. It's Labour's greatest achievement.
Right. Labour's greatest achievement is the NHS. Right. Well, let's talk about that. It crops up a lot. Okay. Many who don't realise it, don't realise there's a bit of a myth around it. It boils down to, Labour Labour politicians regularly give us the line that they created the NHS, and we just accept it. Ian McCartney, the MP, celebrated Labour's centenary in 2006. Fantastic. But anyone familiar with the history of the 1940s will tell you there's a little bit of a lie in this. Now, the NHS actually owes its existence to a climate of wartime British politics. Not just because of the expanded access to, like, basic healthcare, which was a consequence of that whole, conscription thing, and the subsequent rise in what you call expectations. Right. There were a number of comments written in each manifesto for the three major parties at the time. Right. Now, the Conservatives pledged that and I'm going to quote this, the health service of the country will be made available to all citizens. Everyone will contribute to the cost. No one will be denied the attention, the treatment, or the appliances he requires because he cannot afford them. We propose to create a comprehensive health service covering the whole range of medical treatment, from the general practitioner to the specialist, and from the hospital to convalescence and rehabilitation. Okay? In their envision, it also encompassed voluntary hospitals and university medical research, as well as focusing on maternity care. It was Attlee, yes. Liberals, it was a shorter point. They placed in their manifesto health as a priority by saying people cannot be happy unless they are healthy. The Liberal aim is a social policy which will help to conquer disease by prevention as well as cure, through good housing, improved nutrition, the lifting of strains and worries caused by fear of unemployment, and through intensified medical research. The Liberal Party's detailed proposals for improvement health services would leave patients free to choose their doctor, for the general practitioner is an invaluable asset to our social life. And basically, in an additional pamphlet, they gave out a bunch of proposals for practical implementation. Labour, though, okay. Labour's manifesto is a little different. Back then it said, buy good food and good homes. Much avoidable ill health could be prevented. In addition, the best health services should be available free for all. Money must no longer be the passport to the best treatment. In the new National Health Service, there should be health centres where the people may get the best that modern science can offer, more and better hospitals, and proper conditions for our doctors and nurses. More research is required into the cause of disease and the ways to prevent and cure it. But the way they actually played around this in their manifesto wasn't that the NHS would become what it almost says in their very comments I just read, but that it would be an advisory body for healthier nutrition and medical research. No, Nico Taito. The point is, even though the Conservatives did vote against it, under Churchill they were originally going to sign up to introducing the NHS. That was what they were going to do. A Liberal post-war government under Sinclair was fully signed up to introduce it. It was not Labour's great achievement. It was an inescapable conclusion. And it was only because the Labour majority of 1945 made it possible for Attlee's government to confidently embark on an NHS scheme that it even happened in the first place. It was only because of that. It was a good idea that came from someone else, and you guys didn't even back it to begin with. You just wanted an advisory body, and I think it's right to point this out. It is remarkably dishonest to continue peddling the myth that it was you guys that created it. It was your idea. It was not your idea. Shut the fuck up.
The principle of healthcare, free at the point of need, as a human right, was a Labour achievement.
It's not free. Shut the fuck up.
And they voted against it.
And
Yes, they did at the time. They were a vastly different party then. Much like Labour were. Little did we know that Labour would become a party of liars. Fan-fucking-tastic, you lying cunts.
every Tory MP voted against it.
I don't suppose it didn't really matter in hindsight because they were absolutely annihilated in the 45 election. I did actually bother to look and try and find out reasons why they voted against it. But I drew a blank. I'm not quite sure why. I'm not sure, there was something, I know there were comments about it being unaffordable and then references to the Great Depression. There were a number of comments that perhaps that the only reason that the NHS Act of 1946 existed was a way of Labour justifying their existence in the modern age, because they weren't exactly a huge party back then. Does your modern degree on political science include a bumper on lying? No, it does not. I wish it did.
Today, Mr. Speaker, is World Ovarian Cancer Day, for which early diagnosis, like all cancers, is essential. In February, almost a quarter of patients waited more than 2 months to start cancer treatment following a GP referral. The worst performance on record. Will the Prime Minister apologise to those thousands of cancer patients enduring weeks of unbelievable stress and worry whilst they're waiting to start the treatment they should be able to start quickly after they've been referred in order to have a better chance of survival?
I actually agree with this question. I'm okay with it because it finally puts her on the spot. He's absolutely correct, and it's right to agree with him when he is.
Well, we recognise the importance of early diagnosis and early treatment, and in ovarian cancer and in other cancers and in other conditions as well. That's why a key part of the 10-year plan, the long-term plan for the NHS, which is being put forward under this government, is about that early diagnosis. We recognise the importance of that. But the Right Honourable Gentleman might just like to reflect on the fact that there is a part of the United Kingdom where the urgent cancer treatment target hasn't been met since June 2008. Where is that? In Wales, under Labour.
Notice she didn't actually properly answer the question, and then she immediately deflected onto Wales. I'll agree Wales don't do a very good job. Many have argued they don't get enough money. It is one of those it's a means assessed thing. There's a formula for it. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a stupid name for a formula that ascertains how much someone needs. And I think it's unacceptable that Wales is doing as bad as they are. Hello, Grey Day. Trust takes back handers from suppliers to blow their budget with the more expensive options. Imagine my shock. Perhaps accountability is required. And hello, horny hippos. I don't think answering the question by deflecting is a good answer. In fact, this is one of your stupidest answers. Hello, number one. She's not wearing a dog chain. She's wearing. I think she is. Is partaking in role replacement or reversal with her slave.
Under the NHS in Wales, Mr. Speaker, more people are surviving cancer than ever before, and I think
I have found no citation to confirm this.
we should welcome the work that they've done. Mr. Speaker, the Royal College of Radiologists said our workforce projections are increasingly weak. Almost half of all women with ovarian cancer reported having to visit the GP 3 times before they actually got referred for a test. And today we learn that GP numbers are experiencing their first sustainable fall for 50 years. GPs, Mr. Speaker, are often the ones who play the vital role in early identification of cancers and other serious problems. Does the Prime Minister think it's acceptable that 1/3 of people needing an urgent GP appointment on the day that they ask for one are being turned away because of the shortage of GPs?
It's interesting you mentioned shortage of GPs because a number of them, I noticed this, their salary, by the way, is freaking huge. And this plays a part because quite a lot of GPs are able to retire before they have to, as in the sense that instead of retiring in the mid-60s, like the rest of the plebs, they're retiring maybe in their early 50s because they can. Because they're earning so much that they can do that. And yes, they work hard. I won't deny GP works hard. However, you're always going to be hard-pressed to keep GPs when the incentive means they don't have to work unless they love their job. If I want to see my GP, I have to book 4 weeks in advance. That is the only way. Thank you, Vexed Midget. I saw your DM. It is the only way you're going to get an appointment with my doctor. And that's unfortunate. But it's what one has to do because there is a shortage. I'm not sure how you're going to get more people interested in being GPs, considering the long hours and the stress of that job, without incentivizing them through some way. I know a number of them work part-time hours instead. Unless you're going to mandate that they have to do X number of hours, which will push more people away, you're always going to be hard-pressed to get people to willingly sit there all day, poke, prod, and jab some random people all day. I don't know how you're going to fix that, unless you force it, and you can't force it. I do tend to agree, though, that more needs to be done to try and free up GPs, but I don't know how you're going to do it. I really don't.
Right, see, right, honourable gentleman. We recognise that GPs are a vital part of the NHS, and there are actually more GPs in the NHS today than in 2015. But we've also made it easier for people to access their GPs by ensuring that GP surgeries are open for more days of the week, so people can have that better access. We're incentivising GP trainees to work in hard-to-recruit areas and making it easier and quicker for qualified doctors to return to the NHS. And under our NHS long-term...
Prosper, you're right. Because I've seen a few nurse practitioners and they are quite handy. I had one give me a Clexane injection once. Because I had this about a year and a half ago. I couldn't properly put weight on my left leg. And they thought, as a precaution, I should have this injection and go get an ultrasound of the rather large artery going down your leg. And I can't remember which one it is. Because I did chemistry, not biology, okay. And so they had to give me this injection just in case there was any potential thrombosis. The ultrasound, by the way, just for the sake of a story. It was weird having a woman touch my leg up without buying me dinner first. Femoral, thank you. And I totally support the idea of nurse practitioners then, if that would alleviate the problem. Thank you, chat. I'm glad there are some people who understand the human body.
Plan, we will see, for the first time in its 70-year history, the proportion of funding for primary medical and community care as a percentage of the NHS budget increasing for the first time in its 70-year history. That's because it's this government that recognises the importance of primary care in our National Health Service, and it's this government that's careful management of the economy means there's money available to put into our National Health.
Before she finishes, so 20 billion is being invested into the NHS, or given. It is correct. There's nothing wrong with that. However, it is worth pointing out that so it's not really enough money. It doesn't cover all health spending in England, most notably. So this 20 billion will be made available by 2023 to 24. Although nothing as of yet has been specified. Hello, Ventilo. Nothing's been specified on how much money will be spent on health overall. Bureaucracy and everything, you know. The NHS has always been facing financial pressure. With the introduction of austerity, the NHS was asked to find roughly £22 billion in savings. We know this had to happen. There was no way the NHS could exist as it did with austerity having to be introduced. I don't know why many people don't understand that austerity had to happen. We had no choice. There was no other way out of it. You can say, oh, but we could tear down capitalism. Yes, but your version of socialism is actually just capitalism light. So shut the fuck up. Sock damn twats. So the 22 billion additional is an average increase in the budget of about 3.4%, which does take inflation into account. But in 2013, the NHS had a funding gap of 30 billion. So there's still about 8 billion kind of that had to be, after the 22 billion in savings were done, 8 billion had to be filled in by the government. Right? £8 billion is the bare minimum to maintain the existing standards. And many point out that this is a consequence of an aging population, so maybe that 6 months less life is a good thing in this context. No lives matter, everyone, 2020. There were a number of think tanks last year that said that there will be a £4 billion gap in health spending in this year alone, and that the 1.9 billion provided meant that about half of the gap had been filled, which is great, of course. It's not a case. It's not because of the savings NHS has had to find. they're still 10 billion short realistically after all the, or well, 2 billion, maybe 3 at most, because the government still fills that 8 billion gap. It's still short from what it had to save originally to get it back to where it was. Therefore, there's still going to be a gap regardless. Anyway, let's continue with this.
Service.
Jeremy Corbyn.
To any A&E department in the country, you'll find they're under enormous pressure precisely because there is a shortage of GPs to see people in the first place. And the Conservative Secretary of State, whilst promoting private GP services, at the same time is overseeing the biggest drop in NHS GPs for 50 years. 1 in 10 GPs are now seeing twice as many patients as it is safe for them to do so. That is the pressure they're under. The NHS has failed to meet its A&E waiting time target for nearly 4 years. In March this year, more than 1 in 5 patients waited more than 4 hours to be seen. Will the Prime Minister, on behalf of the government, apologise to tens of thousands of people waiting for too long in deep distress just to get seen at an A&E department because of the pressure they are under?
I say to the right honourable gentleman, we recognise the importance of these targets in the NHS. That's why one of the elements of the 10-year long-term plan in the NHS, funded by...
Oh dear, dear. Bye-bye, Irit Bear. Enjoy Ghost Poo. Unknown speaker, I do have a Discord, but it is for patrons, mostly. And a couple creators that I trust that, you know, aren't massive dicks. You're going to notice with Theresa May's answer, she's yet again not really answering the question. This PMQs is a remarkably weak showing from her. And the pause face game, oh yes.
By the biggest cash boost in the NHS's history, given by this Conservative government, because...
After they took away 30 billion. I unfriended you, Neela. Or did I? My apologies, Neela. Just send me another request, okay?
Its good management of the economy is to ensure that we're improving those targets. But perhaps he would also like to stand up and apologise for the fact that the A&E waiting time target hasn't been met, not for 4 years, but for over a decade under a Labour government in Wales.
Oh dear.
Mr. Speaker, the reality is, under a Tory government, spending on the NHS and investment in it is less than it was under Labour, and even with her funding announcements, remains the same case.
Yes, but your spending was irresponsible and earlier said, I called it this, unsustainable.
Mr. Speaker, the complacent attitude and platitudes hide the reality that under the Tories, our health service is going through the longest funding squeeze in history. 20,000 jobs in mental health units are unfilled. Public satisfaction at GP services is the worst on record. Cancer treatment delays are the worst on record. And A&E waiting times, the worst on record. And tragically, infant mortality is rising. Will the Prime Minister admit the government has failed the health service, failed NHS staff, and therefore failed the patients who rely on the NHS?
There is a point about the infanticide stuff, the infant mortality. So until 2014, I've actually got the chart in front of me. Until around 2014, from the Office of National Statistics, I will link this, by the way, for you all to look at. And it had been going down. There's no denying it. It had been going down. Up until 2014, it was going down. At 2016, it had gone up marginally. Like, infant mortality went from 3.7 to 3.8. Obviously it's unacceptable. Of course it is. This is, for every 1,000 live births, infant mortality was 3.8. Jesus Christ, that's not indicative of some kind of trend, of growing trend. I can't send you a link. I'll go in tiny URL, hang on. It's... Of course, I feel bad for the ones that do die. But it's not... It's very dishonest. Oh, I can't send a tiny URL link. Fuck it, I've got a better idea then. It's fine. I know what I'll do. It's fine. I'll tweet it out and put the link in the chat. I do apologise, people, but I will not be defeated. Did that send? Aha! Get fucked, YouTube. Anyway, dishonest commentary from Corbyn, but the question is important, of course.
There are more people alive today because our cancer treatment has improved than would have been in 2010. And at the last general election, somebody said the following. They said that an extra £7 billion for the NHS would give our NHS the resources it needs to deliver the best possible care for patients. I wonder who that was. It was none other than the Leader of the Opposition. Is this government giving the NHS £7 billion? No. Is it giving it twice that? £14 billion? No. It is giving the NHS £20 billion. I'm proud of this government's and the Conservative Party's record on the NHS. It's the Conservative Party that is giving the NHS its biggest cash boost in its history. It's a Conservative Party that's giving it a sustainable 10-year long-term plan to ensure it is there for people in the future. It's the Conservative Party that has seen more nurses, more doctors in our National Health Service dedicated to caring for patients. And that's only possible because it's the Conservative government that manages our economy, manages our public finances, and a Labour Party in government would crash our economy, meaning less money for the NHS, less money for its staff, and less care for its patients.
Jesus Christ. There were so many inaccuracies in what she said, I just can't be arsed. Okay, giving them more money, but you took away a load to begin with. So really you were just giving them back what they already had. He wanted the $7 billion a year. Oh, there was a way of doing that. Does anyone remember those lovely buses during the in-out referendum that promised $13.5 billion or something? Yeah, you can give them that as well if you want. Actually, I'm all for it. I tend to agree with Prospero. If the NHS didn't have to serve a chunk of the East and the EU, maybe it would work better, yes. There should be preferential treatment, and we should not be providing services for everyone outside the 350. That was 350 million a week, which worked out at what, 13 billion a year or something. I do think it should be preferential treatment to an extent, but at the same time, no, because you're in the country, you have a right to use it. But I hope we also provide our services elsewhere. The bureaucracy is ridiculous, really. It's expensive. Maybe they're buying their reams of paper from, I don't know, Indian baby blood. I don't know. Papyrus. Is that what they use? Papyrus? Is that paper or is that the food? Oh, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean. Moving on. I'm going to go straight to Blackford because it's worth it. He makes a gaffe and it's worth highlighting. His gaffe is so good.
Ian Blackford.
Listen very carefully to what you're about to... Oh, I need to put him on the screen, don't I? Ladies and gentlemen, the paper pusher, the paper peddler, the paper fiddler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I also congratulate the Duke and Duchess of Wessex and wish everyone that's had a part over recent days.
Did you hear it? The Duke and Duchess of Wessex, which is incorrect. It is the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Yeah. Where am I? No, technically, I was born in West Sussex. Is that Wessex? I don't know. The paper pit. Oh, dear God.
Sussex.
Geography's not my strong suit either.
Mr. Speaker.
The Barchester Chronicles.
Mr. Speaker, we are 113 days since the Prime Minister's deal was rejected by Parliament.
Members are rather overexcitable. The right honourable gentleman's question must
and will be heard. Mr. Ian Blackford.
Mr. Speaker, we are 113 days since the Prime Minister's deal was rejected by Parliament. A month of Tory talks with Labour, and we are still no further forward. The clock is ticking down, and yet the Prime Minister is silent. When exactly will this House have an update from the Prime Minister?
Can I say to the right honourable...
I will say this is actually an important question. So I am actually intrigued to hear what she says, because we should get updates. As far as we're aware, she and Labour are negotiating a deal that will get the majority in Parliament. So it's a bit, I knew that was what she was going to do. We know that a temporary customs union single market membership will remain. We know this. Basically, staying in the EU but without paying the membership and having no say on it. Temporarily, of course. Because if it's permanent, then we're not leaving, are we? And then our currency will change to that fucking euro crap.
Honourable gentleman, I'd hoped that he would join me in congratulating the Earl and Countess of Dunbarton on the birth of their child. Can I say to the right honourable gentleman, we are indeed talking with the Labour Party. I think there's a very clear message that was given to this House last week from the public. It is that they want us to get on and deliver Brexit.
A number of people made videos about this, about the local council elections. And I would point out, and I looked at this, and it occurred to me how laughable it was that it was indicative of us wanting to remain, when the turnout was as low as 30% in some areas. That is not indicative of remaining, winning. That's indicative of leavers not even being bothered to turn up to vote. It's indicative of people not giving a shit, because it is utterly irrelevant. No one gives a fuck about the councillors. And anyone that thinks that they do are deluded.
I think it's absolutely right that we do so, and we're working on an agreement that can command a majority of this House. If the right honourable gentleman is so keen for us to get on with delivering Brexit, why didn't he vote for the deal in the first place?
Ian Blackford.
Mr. Speaker, Scotland doesn't want a Labour-Tory Brexit stitch-up.
It's interesting you respect the result, but all you want is to remain. Oh, I got the right look there, didn't I? It's not a stitch-up to leave the EU. You just want us to stay in the EU. Her deal is crap. I'll agree. Everything about it's crap, that's why I support no deal. WTO is how it should be. Even Cameron said, when asked just before the vote happened, he was asked if leave won, would he enact Article 50 straight away, and if after 2 years we couldn't negotiate a deal, would he take us out on no deal? He said yes. He had to, because he had no choice. Theresa May is reneged because she's weak. Leave won. Grow the fuck up, you fat, dumpy, balding prick. And if you see the top of his head, he is balding, I promise you.
Scotland voted to remain, and once again, with no Scottish representation in the talks, our nation is being ignored. Does the Prime Minister think this is good enough for a supposed union of equals? The Prime Minister must confirm today that any deal will be put back to the people for a final say.
No. Hello, Grey Day. It shouldn't go back to the people. As far as voting on the deal or no deal, it doesn't need to. The terms had already been reached. Therefore, no deal should have happened. I don't need Theresa May's answer for this, by the way. It is pointless, quite frankly. Just before I finish, though, I'm going to do one very kind thing. It's muted. Good. Right. My friend Diskanar is currently streaming over on his YouTube channel. He's playing Minecraft, though. So if you want to go mock him, it's what I've got on the screen now, and this is the link to his channel. Please consider going over there and throwing some shit at him. It's well worth it. So I hope you'll have a lovely evening. Thank you all very much for joining me, and yeah, see you all tomorrow.